Would you let Jeffrey Epstein watch your kids? Didn't think so. What about his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell? Hard pass. So why trust him? Mark Carney, Maxwell's friend, not yours.
Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. First one post-election. Contrary to the ad you saw at the start, I'm afraid that Mark Carney is ours for now. I won't be shocked if they'll pull it off for 4 more years. Yeah, sorry to start off on a negative note. I see commenter Mark Blaine saying, give us hope. I'll offer some hope in different ways. But I tell you what, when it talking about the federal system, it is hopeless. Hopefully enough people have realized it, though, because there are ways we can get change. Just got to stop playing with the rigged game set, which is never going to pay off for us. So I'll talk a little later too with Alexander Brown of the National Citizens Coalition. We'll break down, discuss what happened in the election, try to interpret what came about and what might be coming yet. Because yes, we got a Carney minority, but you know that minority is just shy of a majority, and that might change too. He might be cutting some deals, I suspect. They just need a few seats, and they'll be wheeling and dealing. Betty commenting, saying, yes, feeling like it's a lost cause. Jeremiah saying we need a better voting system. Well, voting system's one thing, but it's the entire system of Canada. It's got an issue. But let me get ranting a bit about that, and then we'll check in on some news. Use that comment scroll. Good to see you all there. Tracy, Jeremiah. Keep things civil and keep the conversation going. Okay, so I mean, if nothing else, though, positive has come out of this federal election. It's awakened Westerners to the fact that they're never going to win in the current system. Canada was designed with a system that centralizes political power while the outlying provinces feed the middle. Even when the conservative parties do enjoy those short periods in power, they don't dare to try to change anything substantially, or they'll be sent back into the political wilderness by Central Canadian voters. I mean, the Trudeau government was the worst government Canada has endured in generations. Those Liberals lurched from scandal to controversy as their ineptitude doubled the national debt, while the GDP per capita plummeted. Housing prices went out of reach for young Canadians, while health care became increasingly inaccessible due to unfettered mass immigration policies. Oil and gas resources were shut in through regulations, reducing employment, raising energy costs, and making Canada almost entirely dependent on the USA for exports. Authoritarianism reigned in shocking actions when they were taken against peaceful protesters in Ottawa, while a blind eye is turned towards a campaign of terror by Hamas supporters targeting Jewish communities in the streets of Toronto. Bills were crafted to control media and online speech, while all efforts were made to cover up decades of Chinese Communist Party interference and activity within Canada. Along with that, we had an opioid epidemic exploding as Trudeau legalized hard drugs and thousands of Canadians died of overdoses. Meanwhile, violent criminals victimized Canadians repeatedly while on bail, and Trudeau chronically embarrassed the nation overseas as he pursued woke social justice causes while the economy languished. Nobody cared about the alleged right of a transgendered man to compete in sports against girls, yet those were the causes that dominated the news under Trudeau's guidance. I mean, even his own think tanks. A Privy Council report predicted Canada would sink into a dystopian world where citizens are going to be hunting and gathering to eat, as the wealth divide puts food and housing out of reach of the average person under continued Liberal policies. So Canadians finally appeared to sit up and pay attention. Trudeau's popularity plummeted so low that his own party finally turned on him and pushed him grudgingly from power. The nation looked ready for a democratic reset as the Conservatives were poised to win a supermajority in Parliament. But then the Liberals rushed a leadership race and crowned Mark Carney as their leader. And despite maintaining the same team and policy set as Trudeau, the leadership swap, it was enough for Eastern Canadians. They felt that's all the party needed was a little change at the helm, and they rewarded the Liberals with an increased seat count that might even turn into a majority. They'll probably give Carney a majority the next possible opportunity if it doesn't come sooner. Western Canada is going to continue to be mercilessly milked through an imbalanced equalization and fiscal transfer system, while underrepresented in both the House of Commons and the Senate. The energy industry is going to continue to be confined. Capital investment is going to dry up due to Carney's aversion to pipelines and his plans to pander to Quebec. But bluntly, the West is screwed, and it's going to continue to be. until the West heads for the door. The escape hatch exists. It's called the Clarity Act. The act was designed to be applied to the Quebec independence movement, but now it appears to have offered Alberta and Saskatchewan the path to escape the abusive relationship they endure under the Federation. A clear yes vote in a provincial referendum on independence obliges the federal government to negotiate the secession of a province voting to go. It's democratic, it's reasonable, and it's the only option left for the West. A yes vote isn't a rejection of Canadians, it's a rejection of their system. It's a means to an end, and it's a way to start the ball rolling on true systemic change. Canada may not end after such a vote, but the contract that binds it would. Either the Western provinces will remain fully independent, or they might negotiate into a new federation that doesn't neglect provincial rights and abilities. Either outcome is superior to the status quo. I mean, Preston Manning shunted the Western independence movement at the end of the 80s with the Reform Party and the rallying call of the West wants in. Well, the Reform Party failed and faded, and the West is no better off. Even Manning's now hinting at independence is an option the West has got to be considering. There will be no more playing within a rigged game. Canada is broken, and the West wants out. Well, that's where I am today. Let's see what else is going on. How's it going, Dave?
Good. I'm in Cory. I'm sitting here right next to a best-selling author.
Getting close. I'm into the top 100. I think, 76th book in Canada, ahead of Andrew Coyne.
Oh, the way that makes your day, I bet.
Oh, yes.
Better than Andrew Coyne.
Yes.
So are you going for a second printing, third printing?
Well, the nice thing is it's print on demand through Amazon and everything, so it just ships and prints as the orders come in. So, but it's definitely gotten a second life. I mean, that book's a little more than 2 years old now, the Sovereigntist Handbook. I appreciate you letting me make a plug.
There you go.
But yes, since this election, holy cow, all of a sudden that book is rolling. People are reaching out and buying the guidebook to independence.
I guess this means I might have to finally read it.
Yeah, well, if you can get yourself through it.
If I can get past
You've heard enough of my
chapter 1.
crap for the last few years as it is.
Yeah, exactly. So the fallout obviously continues from the election. Today, all the major energy bosses sent a open letter to Carney congratulating him and said, come on, you moron, let's get some pipelines built. They didn't quite use that language, but that was the thrust of it. Donald Trump just finished a cabinet meeting, and he praised Carney, said he's a very nice gentleman, and that he's going to be at the White House within a week. So that'll be interesting. I bet they talk tariffs. And he says Poilievre actually hated him more than Carney did. So I don't know. Poilievre probably could have used that. More fallout from that horrible Filipino festival tragedy in Vancouver. Vancouver Mayor Sims says, come on, we got to do something to keep these people sort of locked up when they need to be locked up. And he's pleading for more provincial and federal help. And Robbie Starbuck, you remember the guy who's taken down company after company for their woke DEI policies. He's now suing Mr. Zuckerberg and Meta AI. Because apparently Meta AI says nasty things about him when you ask them to do it. So he's suing for that. So interesting to get a bot on the stand and see how that goes for us. So, and we'll have lots more fallout from the Ledge this afternoon, Alberta Ledge, with Daniel Smith playing the sort of referendum card yesterday by introducing a new law that would cut in half the number of signatures required to hold a referendum, Cory. So imagine you'll be a block captain signing people up.
We'll see. Like I said, I am not a part of any party or group. I mean, I'm supportive of different ones and everything, but I'll sit on the sidelines and offer guidance and take things where they go. We shouldn't forget with this whole thing. I mean, this referendum legislation, of course, the primary thing people are thinking about is an independence referendum. But this can apply to a whole lot of other things. I mean, it was initially modeled just to empower citizens. If you want to make a major policy change or something else, I mean, Switzerland has this kind of legislation. You know, you can put the power in the hands of the citizens. I know that people are automatically going to say independence every time they talk about that, but there can be a lot of good coming out of this.
Yeah, and was it only 171,000 signatures needed now?
Something like that. That's a heck of a lot.
It is a lot.
More than a casual, oh boy, I'm ticked off about my tax rate. I'm going to invoke a referendum. Well, you need a lot of friends.
Do you remember off the top of your head how much that Calgary one got for Gonda?
69,000 out of
69,000
they needed.
So, and then they were all declared invalid the next day.
yeah. They said, they didn't cross a T or something like that. So these are the things and there'll be a lot of discussion of that. I mean, again, the bar, I think, Smith has made it achievable. but there's a heck of a lot more hurdles yet and roadblocks. It's not as easy as some people might think, but at least it was impossible before she's changed it or going to.
And you're ruling out leading the independence troops?
Oh, God, no. I've been there. I did that, and I sucked. I mean, I did that back when I was 29, and then we blew up the Alberta Independence Party. We formed it, but we blew it up too. I've learned a lot. I got a lot to offer, I think, but no, somebody else can march at the front of that parade.
You still got the name trademarked?
No.
No.
It belongs to Alberta.
It belongs to Alberta. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for the updates. And I imagine just another thing on your front, you mentioned you're going to be leaving the country and traveling into the Middle East.
Yes, very excited. Going to go to Israel next month and poke around there, see what's going on, and hopefully file reports and videos and all sorts of good stuff from there.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Watching what you see over there. Oh, right on. Well, I'll let you, Derek's just going to swamp you with stuff to get it all prepared in advance. So that,
oh, exactly. I'm going to just hide in the corner.
Okay, I'll let you get back to your corner then, and appreciate the updates.
Thanks, Cory.
All right, thanks, Dave. That is our news editor, Dave Naylor. As you can see, lots on the go. He's always managing those stories, and we're putting them out, guys. We're beating the heck out of legacy media. Again, another record month for the Standard for people coming out. So thank you, guys, for coming out and reading those stories. And hey, the paywall is going back up. I hate to say it, but we gave it for free throughout the course of the election. We wanted to get the news out to people, give you guys a taste of what's going on. It's going to be going back up, and $10 a month. Come on, $100 a year. You don't think twice about paying that for cable products or streaming subscriptions, or you never thought about it when you were getting a newspaper subscription in the past. Well, make sure to keep in mind you can do that for media today. That's the new media. The advertising helps and it's important, but the real model now is subscriptions. So if you haven't subscribed yet, get on there, guys. westernstandard.news/subscription. If you already have, thank you. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about a lot of things. I'm going to talk about independence. I'm going to talk about the election. I do want to talk about just that horrific incident, though, in Vancouver. Just something on a more recent news thing. I mean, that crazy man drove through, killed 11 people, injured others. I mean, you look at some of the details, the stories, it's just awful. One was it sounds like a girl lost her parents and a sibling. And now, it's one of those times where we're horrified, we're angry, and we point fingers. And we should use it productively now. And the mayor of Vancouver is talking, and he's right on something. The man who did this never should have been out and able to do that terrible, terrible action. And he's pointing where it belongs. Mental health institutions. We don't have them anymore. A stupid, well-meaning, isn't that the nature of so many policies? We mean well, but they get unintended consequences. So the movement for deinstitutionalization began decades ago. People thought it's much better that we close these institutions and have people do community living. And it's nice-minded, but it's not realistic and it's dangerous. And when you get somebody who's truly mentally ill and in bad shape and a danger to others, I mean, don't look at it as being vindictive. Don't look at it as being cruel. It's just we have to sequester people from society, try to treat them, but also recognize they present a hazard. And it's the humane way to go. We've turned out so many people from our mental institutions because we closed them all down. There's no room. I talked about this a couple of years ago on my own show. I had a family member who had a mental breakdown. And I tell you what, to get somebody into mental health care, it took over 30 hours of sitting in a hospital waiting room with a person who was not in control of themselves. And then he was on a gurney for 2 days in the hallway. And then they got him into a little ward within the hospital where they did secure him and realized this man is so far along, we need to keep him secured. And then they medicate him and put him out after 40 days because there's just no room. It was a tiny little thing. Look, we have to accept some people will need to be secured, sometimes maybe for life. It doesn't have to be torture. It doesn't have to be prison. It can be good facilities, as much treatment and life as we can allow for somebody when they are in such mental state, but it has to be done. So in the case of this man who repeatedly had mental health issues, who repeatedly had problems with the police, got released and the worst possible outcome happened. It was terrible. So we can't stop what happened there, but we got to look at this and try and figure out how we can stop more of this from happening. And Mayor Sims is right. We got to examine our system. Look on the streets, the amount of people on the streets, the people who are addicted, the people who are shouting at the clouds, walking up and down with their pants around their ankles. Why are they in the streets? Are we a compassionate society when we're actually letting our fellow citizens live in those conditions and be like that? So let's re-examine our entire mental health systems, guys, for ourselves and for the mentally ill people. It's just not right. All right. I'll go from one downer note to another. Let's talk about the federal election, though, and we'll bring in Alexander Brown for the National Citizens Coalition. Let's start breaking down what happened Monday. Hey, how's it going?
Cory, not good. Not good for many reasons. I'm also in Vancouver myself, and so it's been a very difficult few days for people to sort of the wonderful Filipino community out here, and just the obviousness of the need for criminal justice reform and no more sort of hug a thug or hug someone deeply unwell, and that all this sort of vague harm reduction policy only ends up just sharing the harm with the community. And so perhaps we're seeing some of that well-meaning translate to what we're seeing with the election, where it's not all ne'er-do-well types and skullduggery dooming you. There are some people who do think they're making a difference, but they're actually making things for you and your family and safety and affordability, security, much, much harder.
Yeah, so in this election, I mean, I guess one thing, a lot of people were kind of maintaining, for people who didn't want to see another return of the Liberals, believing that the polls were wrong, the polls were slanted, but they were actually, it turns out, pretty darn accurate this time around. I mean, they made some mistakes before in polling, but most of the pollsters pretty much saw this one coming.
Yeah, it ended up being remarkably close, and funnily enough, perhaps closest was measured by an 18-year-old aggregator in Ontario. I think the handle is Real Albanian Pat or something like it. But we saw voter turnout was up to close to 69%. We saw that the young vote was starting to really come out for Conservatives. They won the student vote for perhaps the first time ever, which is really remarkable. But you did end up seeing what folks like me feared and what many feared and what some of the third-party ads, particularly from the NCC, were trying to adjust for, which is that the boomers broke hard for Trump and only Trump. If you look at the top 10 ballot issues, the sort of exit poll, it was Trump number one for them. And then like housing, affordability, making Canada a better place to live, like dead last in that top 10. And that equation was different for the under 55s, for younger generations, folks in their 30s, such as myself. And so the polls were not entirely wrong. Did they nail certain dynamics and surges and popularities? I don't believe so. But I think many fears have come true. What I would also say, though, is the polls were saying going into Election Day that the Liberals had a 70% chance of a majority. And while it might end up being a pseudo majority, if a few NDPers cross the floor, they cut a little deal while the party rebuilds for 2 or 3 years. It is a small solace, but the worst case scenario in some ways was avoided. But of course, we are sort of grasping at straws, so to speak, with independent sentiment now rising, with people feeling so aggrieved, with young people losing a measure of hope. It's still not the ideal response to the last 10 years. And there are a lot of people who are, feeling very let down right now.
Yeah, well, and a commenter, Betty, said, fear won the election. I mean, something that really turned the tides wasn't just getting rid of Trudeau, though lots of people were sick and tired of him. And it wasn't just bringing in Carney. It's not like he was such a dynamic leader that he pulled people over. But just that external perceived threat of Trump, they really felt, I think, that's when when you're worried about something from outside, you introvert. You're not looking to shake up your own home. You want to stay the same so you can deal with what's going outside, even if it probably didn't make it any more effective in dealing with the external threat. But it was just a factor nobody could have seen coming, and it turned out to serve the incumbent party very well.
Yeah, I mean, for a party that lowered the flag for a few years, all of a sudden they were allowed to rally around the flag and to benefit from the rally around the flag effect. Angelo Isidoro put this in a post yesterday. He's the BC Conservative Party sort of strategist, and that dynamic broke hard in the Liberals' favor by being able to point to Orange Man bad And Orange Man was very bad for the Conservatives and very obnoxious for businesses at threats of tariff. It offered them not just a social license to excuse the failures of the last 10 years, but it also gave them a chance to not have to run on their record. And by not having to run on their record, they were able to secure what presently looks like a strong minority that at its base is very unstable for the relationship between the West and the East.
So, I mean, we're stuck with Carney as a prime minister for a period of time, no matter, like it or lump it. That's the way it goes. But I mean, it doesn't mean the work of the NCC or us or citizens is done by any means. I mean, we got to hope to be able to nudge Carney into governing as well as we could possibly hope. As Dave mentioned in the news update, for example, the energy industries are trying to pressure and say, okay, look, let's get on with it then. Follow through with your promises. Let's see some pipelines. Let's see some infrastructure. Let's see some movement. Do you think Carney's going to move, though?
I think, yeah, I feel like my pause there probably tells you something. But I think you might see movement at the very start where, I mean, I think there's been, to the Conservatives' credit, and I think to the movement's credit, whatever that movement is, grassroots, the official party, small c, big C, the Conservatives have dominated policy and the policy conversation and dragging the Liberals and the far left back towards the center to do right by some real big FUCK ups. But we all know that, promises during elections, might not mean a whole lot. So he might offer some vague olive branch, like you get one pipeline or you get this or you get that. But his record speaks for itself. Like, it's all there. It's in his book. I had the misfortune of reading it and put it in a Western Standard piece, like a few others have. There's a roadmap to big trouble here, bigger trouble for the West, for affordability, for so-called housing solutions, which are just Soviet housing blocks in major cities, instead of addressing issues of immigration or getting out of the way of developers who can build actual homes that aren't like Brookfield-owned trailers. So you might get, just these little trinkets. But I think very quickly, and I think others have suggested as such, we might be looking at a Keir Starmer effect, like within 6 months. And then, is there something you can work with the NDP there to pull the trigger earlier than expected? I don't know. You're already seeing the Bloc Québécois, who did not have a good election night, signaling all kinds of trouble and increased resistance to pipelines with their sort of spiritual NDP-ness, which will never quite make sense for Quebec nationalism to me and to the West. But it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well. It might not be the asteroid that we all think it is, but after such a period of time and so much resentment and people deserving catharsis and to feel like the government is getting out of their way a little bit to even just let them bring their energy projects to market, perhaps more importantly, is like the vibe, the mood is just, it's off, it's bad. It's you dust yourself off and you get back out there because you have no choice. No one's coming to save us but us. But it doesn't bode well. It doesn't mean we don't give up, but I don't have high hopes. I don't have high hopes, at least for the immediate future.
Yeah, and I mean, well, the Conservatives, I mean, this is kind of the mixed outcome of this election in a lot of ways. I mean, if people, there's no way about it. It was a loss, but not because of how they did. I mean, they increased their vote share, they increased their seat count. It was forward momentum. But the one thing that happened that has really, really put them in a bad position and hamstrung them was that Poilievre lost his seat. And they, if you've increased ground but lost your leader's presence in the House of Commons, you have a hell of a dilemma. I mean, people are talking about possibly somebody stepping aside in a safe seat or something, but boy, what a distraction when they should be preparing to set up to be an effective, strong opposition, at least, which is the mandate they got. And they're going to have a lot of trouble dealing with that.
They are. And it's going to be really, because I don't believe a by-election has to be called for 6 months either. And so if you're the Liberals, I mean, perhaps the greatest House of Commons attack dog in the history of Canadian politics is Pierre. And so you're gonna bench him for as long as you possibly can. And you'll likely see like a Melissa Lantsman really step up. She's ostensibly his deputy, his number two. But it's going to fall on her. and I think he could have been dealing some really big blows. It's not that she's not capable. It's not that they don't have gifted communicators, but no, that's going to impact them. That down ballot initiative that took place in that riding. There was some sort of skullduggery with a ton of sign smashing and vandalism. And like, I was in Ottawa 2 to 3 weeks before the election day, and there was a real hostility and a vibe towards the Conservatives, largely sort of carried out by gray-haired socialists and the sort of public sector workers and the folks that wanted to keep growing the endless bureaucracy. And so, but it was effective. As nefarious as it was, they still spiked voter turnout in the riding to like an incredible number. And it's monkey business aside, like they got them. But the Conservatives can, of course, also point to that was a very small and narrow sabotage sort of attempt, and they've made massive gains everywhere else with young Canadians, with their highest sort of voter turnout since Mulrooney. We're talking better voter shares than even the Harper majorities, which we now all look back on, and wish, they would return like so badly. And so they've put up a blue wall in southwestern Ontario, and so it's not all bad, but it's like that's a narrative point for them that is going to really stick in their craw, and their political enemies are going to just wield that over them. Well, where's Pierre? And so it's going to be a frustrating time for them.
Oh yeah, and it goes both ways. I mean, Alberta, they've been beating the heck out of Nenshi for a long time because he's been a leader without a seat in the provincial legislature. That's just the nature of the game. It just puts them at a rough disadvantage. As you said, Melissa Lansman's fantastic in covering things, but still, when it's not technically the leader of your party, it just doesn't work as well. I mean, an interesting development. We really have become a two-party system. I mean, that's been the outcome of this. The Bloc are still there, but they've been reduced. The NDP is almost completely irrelevant now. Maybe it's time for the Conservatives to change tactics a little too and start looking at things. Building it is a black and white now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've seen them sort of already start adjusting for that change in some ways, which is that the Conservatives are becoming the party of unions and trade unions, and these were traditional NDP. That was the NDP. They were the party of the worker. This sort of Trotskyist, we will help you, as you work with them, on the means of production. But now that's very much the Conservatives' zone, because the NDP have become the party of the teachers' lounge and abdicated on any real pseudo-socialist or working class responsibilities. And so that has fallen to the Conservatives. They've done a very good job with that, to the credit of even Ontario provincial Conservatives, who made a complete mess of this federal election in a few ways. They've done really quite well at that as well. And so that pivot has already started. The young people are voting Conservative more than ever before, trade unions, etc. But they have a tricky decision to make. It's like, because normally Conservatives benefit from a strong NDP. Like, that's part of the ecosystem, right? You need someone drawing votes for you in the other direction. But do you let them up off the mat? Do you give them a helping hand? Or do you know that even after you do that, they might still turn on you and create another set of these endless coalitions that only end up driving working Canadians and regular Canadians completely nuts? And then congratulations, you just rearmed your opponent, and maybe you should have just accepted that this is now and may be a two-party ecosystem going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to be a lot of soul searching for the parties on all ends. For the immediate term, though, as I said, with the Conservatives hamstrung sort of, and just everything in flux, I'll kind of, use that as a segue for you guys to talk about your organization, because it's be important now for advocacy groups, third parties, to make sure that the policy discussions remain happening. I mean, the Conservatives are going to be talking amongst themselves. We need people talking to Canadians. These policies still exist. We want to make sure then, if Carney stole the Conservative platform, that's fine, but you better bloody implement it. We've got to stay on their case. I imagine you guys are going to. So what's the Citizens Coalition going to be up to now post-election, and how can people find you?
Yeah, it's very much going to be about, okay, you stole the platform. This is what people need. This is this is the mandate beyond Trump. You got to pretend your mandate was just Trump. It was a satisfying bomb to a select set of people and a efficient voter demographic in cities. That's great. Working Canadians needed all the things that you suddenly claim to care about. And so you have to deliver on them. And we know that he's not going to deliver on many of them. There are still major solutions required and grassroots, full-throated, defenses of the much needed changes to immigration, to housing. That involves the provinces too, like changing zoning, lowering development costs. There does need to be, of course, federal reform in the courts and when it comes to catch and release justice and the approaches to harm reduction and drugs and crime. And it's just this, there are failures on every single file, and those failures remain. And so as a third party, we are of course very frustrated by the results. We are small c conservative, and so it's you can live with minority governments, and I'm not wearing a jersey when I'm rooting for what happens on election nights, but it's at least a stronger minority for the Conservatives in opposition would have gone a long way. Like, the worry, of course, is the Liberals just partner up with the NDP again, and we're looking at maybe 3 years if you were game planning that out for an election. And so it's going to be about, if we were able to increase the voter turnout this year, to be a part of that, to embolden the missing middle, it's the best election turnout in 31 years. That is something. That is close to 69%. You wanted to see it go over 70%. You did. But it's going to be about giving people their agency where they don't feel like they're feeling that from the parties. It's going to be about emboldening them to not give up and lay down in the street and just take another start of a lost Liberal decade. And because we have to do right by our industries, by our energy industry, by our working families who can't afford homes and don't feel safe in their neighborhoods. And so it is going to be doubling down on those priorities and those principles, and hoping to continue to do good work on behalf of people, because we have no choice but to continue to do the work, because in a vacuum, this can get worse. This could have been an overwhelming majority. And it is our job, it is all of our jobs, particularly the third parties, to stand up for the little guy and to stand up for Canadian business interests and family interests right now.
Well, the campaign never officially stops, really. It's just an ongoing thing. So I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you coming on to talk to us about it today. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Cory.
Great. Thank you. So that was Alexander Brown of the National Citizens Coalition. Again, I mean, it's a solid organization that's been around a long time, pushing common sense and conservative ideas. You might remember that's where Stephen Harper really kind of broke ground and got his start as a public person after his first term as a member of Parliament with the Reform Party. So yeah, we've got some interesting things going on. Watching right now. I mean, there's going to be a few recounts, a few challenges, but for the most part, there's nothing that's really going to change the outcome. The bigger question now is, will Carney be able to pull those NDP members in and make a government out of them? And I think he's going to get away with it. Personally, we'll see. I've been wrong, but there's 7 of them to choose from. They are now in a party of that's devastated. The NDP's dead in the water. Jagmeet Singh resigned in disgrace after basically crushing into the dust. Carney can offer those 7, even 4 of them will be enough, some cabinet positions, things like that, and make a deal so he will get a majority. Once he does that, well, then we're looking at least 4 years of Liberal government, guys. 4 years. No way to get out of it, no matter what we do. Well, in the federal election. So let's talk about the other part, the independence card. It's been coming up and talking. Now, okay, so I see a commenter, Nicely Lynn, saying petitions at over 90,000. Let's do this. I'm guessing you're talking about the petitioning by the Alberta Prosperity Project moving towards an independence referendum. Independence sentiment in the West is exploding. There's no doubt about it. We knew that would happen with the Liberals being reelected. I wrote the Sovereignist Handbook as Dave was, gave me the chance to point out the book. Of course, my sales are surging, and we're talking about things. But let's talk about the petitioning. Let's talk about the steps to get towards independence. And I like the way the APP is doing this, and Dr. Modry and some others have been doing this for quite a while. What they're doing, this was under the presumption, and I'll talk about how that's changed too, but the presumption at that time was that Alberta needed over 600,000 signatures on an official petition, official one, paper one, hand signed with witnessed on official government papers to invoke a referendum. It was an impossible bar. But what the Alberta Prosperity Project was doing is, well, let's database. Let's get the people who would say they would sign a petition and get them all together so that when the time comes, then we know where they are, we can reach out, and we can really accomplish this. And yes, I'll get to that with now we only need 177,000. So bear in mind. So what the APP is doing is just databasing. It's like an internal petition. This doesn't count towards the real petition whenever that happens. Now, Premier Smith came out yesterday and said she was going to fix the legislation because we had crap legislation. We had fake legislation. Jason Kenney put in referendum legislation, but what he did was set the bar so high it was impossible to accomplish. What Premier Smith is going to do is now to invoke a referendum, you need 10% of the amount of people who turned out at the last election on an official petition to invoke a referendum, which comes to about 177,000. And I was saying earlier, if you've ever run for election or done anything where you an official real petition, you need at least 10% more of that on there because some names are going to get stricken off, whether it was a person who you couldn't read it or they gave the wrong address or whatever else. So that already increases the bar a little bit. And as I said, it has to be on an official petition paper. Daniel Smith also is going to expand the period because it used to be only 90 days you could do it. And now it's going to be a 120-day period to be able to do it. So it's definitely within the realm of being accomplished now, which is great. And I mean, it's an interesting way for Premier Smith to shoot a shot across the bow of central Canada without jumping on and embracing, an independent stance. She's just saying it's up to Albertans, but I'm going to give them the tools if they want to utilize them. Now, the thing I'm getting worried about, as again, a very dedicated independent supporter, I've been at this for since I was in my 20s. Don't pull the trigger yet. I'm seeing some people out there yelling, we need a referendum tomorrow. We need a referendum next week. We need a referendum next month. No, we don't, because we don't have the support for it yet. It's not saying we're giving up, but do this with a plan. Do this carefully. Just because you're mad today doesn't mean there's enough Albertans mad today. Saying yes to independence to a pollster on a phone is still a world of difference from putting a mark on the ballot when push comes to shove. And nicely Lynn says, knows. And yeah, I think a lot of people do, but we got to watch the some activists who are really trying to get this done quick. Because if you want to set it back for years, it's not like we can run referendums over and over and over again. It's not that easy. You want to set this movement back by a couple of years, a few years, hold a referendum in a couple of months and lose. Hold a referendum and come out with 30% on it. And you're going to be years away from the next chance to do it. What we need to do as independent supporters, whether it's different groups, parties, whatever, is build the base. Keep doing as the APP is already doing. Build the network. Get the pre-names ready. Get the plan together. Get the team together. I mean, just, when a referendum's called, whenever it happens, it means you're going to have a heck of a campaign on the ground. Kenzie Kraken saying there's going to be a strong campaign against independence. Yes, there will. This will be a campaign, and it'll be a different sort of campaign. A referendum campaign's a different animal. So you don't have an organized political party managing that campaign. You're going to have a number of groups and a whole lot of individuals working on it. And if they're putting out a bunch of different disparate messaging and it's not organized and it's not going well, the referendum is going to lose. If there isn't get out the vote campaigns, if there isn't some kind of standardized signage, I mean, there's going to be a whole lot to be done. And that's going to take some months, maybe a year or two before we're ready to actually pull that trigger. So hang on, maintain your dissatisfaction. I'm not saying sit on your hands. There's a lot to do. There's a mountain of things to do. And Paradoxy pointing out, I did a video on this on my YouTube channel. Yeah, it's taken off quite well. Close to 60,000 views on that one already. It's great. People are interested. People want to get active on these things, and they should. But do it with plan, guys, because we can blow this up. We can screw it up. The other thing is that's different with a referenda is that it's not a political party thing. Look, there's a right to have political parties. Form them. By all means, you can get messages out. But it's wasted energy right now. Dedicate that time and energy to working on getting a referendum win ahead. Political parties have to deal with a bunch of policies. They have to deal with healthcare. They got to deal with schools and so on. If you don't have all those policies, you won't win an election. That's what the point of a party is. A referendum is different. It's just a question. So if you mess around with all these parties fighting with each other, you're not getting anywhere closer when you could be moving closer to working to win the referendum, because that's all that matters. It's really all that matters. So these parties are spawning up, and new ones, even, of course, reaching out for your wallet. Money's going to have to be spent on things, but it should be spent with the focus of a petition, getting a winning referendum condition, and getting it done. Because, I mean, look at last election results, including even the Alberta Independence Party that I took against Klein, 20 some years ago. They don't get anywhere. In the last election, we had 5 independence parties, and we can't pretend that they were splitting the vote, because out of all 5 together, they didn't break 1%. It just doesn't go there. So if you want independence, just look at it rationally, look at what's making ground, look at what's getting you closer, what's not. And more independence parties aren't getting us any closer. If you don't like what the Alberta Prosperity Project is doing, maybe look to form another group or join another group, or just work as an individual. I mean, I'm going to talk about a lot of those things in time to come too. You build the grassroots. That's the neat thing with a referenda campaign. It's just a single issue thing. I know there's a million little branch issues on it, and that's where we can get into the weeds and get in trouble. Don't stick to just the independence part. Just that. Keep it there. Don't let them keep pulling you over here and over here and over here and over here. Don't let the whataboutisms stop you, because they'll be what about. Well, that's fine. But don't let them pull you off course. Keep focused. We got an opportunity, and things are going to happen. J.R. Michael saying, let's utilize the UCP power to act on Albertans' interests. They will if we get the signatures. I mean, yeah, they're putting it in the hands of Albertans. And that's the other thing, too. And I've said before, I mean, I do still think that the movement should be people should be active within parties. It doesn't mean you have to love the party, but get active within it. But at the same time, don't try and turn it into an independence party, because that'll kill it the same way as past other independence parties have died. I mean, I've run under an independence banner before, and you know what happens? You knock on the door, you have become a single issue party. And single issue parties don't go places. The marijuana party didn't go places. Things like that don't get there. Then all you can talk about is independence. And even though a lot of people are interested in independence, they aren't going to vote in a general election on a party based on that. And if you turn the UCP into an overtly independence party, you're going to kill them, and then she's going to be our next premier. But it doesn't mean you can't nominate a lot of people who are independence-minded within that party as candidates. Talk to those, and keeping policies, things that need to be done. Something else I've said before, too. It's pretty hard to make the case that Alberta is going to be better off independent when our own provincial government is a gong show right now. As one of the commenters mentioned, I'm sorry, I went up the scroll. I saw somebody mention, when am I going to talk about the AHS schedule? Yeah, that's a huge one. There's a mess going on. It sounds like there's a procurement disasters. We got multiple investigations, stuff going on in the Smith government over healthcare reforms. We got to clean up our own act first. We got to show that we're better. There's other things that we got to get them back on track on. The provincial government messed up. The Canada pension plan, the Alberta pension plan idea died on the vine because the provincial government rolled it out terribly. And they allowed the federal government to rag the puck on it and put out a report that still never clarified what the share of the CPP Albertans would get in pulling out. Let's fix that. We got to get back on that. Let's get the RCMP out of here. We can get a provincial force. Enough of the talk. Let's get it done. So I'm not saying for people to do nothing, not by any means, but I am saying cool your jets if you think we should get a referendum right away. That's foolish. It's not going to get you closer to where you have to go. And if you want to shake Canada up, you want to make change across the country, because I think these referendums, Saskatchewan, Alberta, it'll be good for all of Canada to change things. We got to do it right, guys. Got to do it carefully. Got to do it with a plan. We're mad right now. And we know when we do things, when we make choices, when we're angry, they aren't always the best choices. Keep the anger simmering. Don't let it overwhelm you. Keep it, harness it, turn it into something productive. Change the system. Remember, guys, it's the system, not the party. And that's what people always have to remember. Don't let them grasp the false hope. I still think they should support federal conservative parties because they'll be better for the West, but it won't fix the problems. So don't give up on changing things on the federal front, but you know the exit later, because a conservative party can only do so much because it's a broken system, not just who's in there right now. So look at all these things. This election bummed us out. We're going to get some problems. They're going to be a pain to Alberta, as they always have, and it's the Liberals. They're in power. But we can make things better. We can turn this into a positive. The independence movement is livening up again, but let's keep the movement alive and look long-term and make it into something and finally break this broken system. Okay, that's the time I got for today, guys. The pipeline's going to be on tonight. Tune into that. We'll be breaking some more stuff down with the panel. I'll be back again with my show on Friday, and I believe Nigel's got another one coming out tomorrow, and Derek's got a special interview too. So keep watching all those Western Standard channels, guys. Lots of shows and things coming on, and of course, keep going to the site to get your news. Thank you all again, coming from the permanently ceded territory of Calgary. I will see you all on the next one.